We were recently just looking at your numbers, and you were able to take your practice from $200,000 to close to $500,000 in production in 12 short months.
It blows my mind. That doesn't even sound like something that should happen. So it did though.
Welcome to the very first episode of My Dental Playbook. I'm your co-host, Gary Bird. Along with my friend, Dr. Blake Hamblin, we're going to be diving deep into his practice, and he's going to be sharing all the do's, the don'ts, and the hacks that he's learned along the way. We're going to be talking about how he's taken his practice from $200,000 to $500,000 in just the last 12 months. And he's going to be sharing resources with you that will absolutely help you do the same thing. In today's episode, we're specifically going to be talking about how he uses a template to train his team on presenting treatment and using financial options to get more yeses in the chair. This is absolutely mind-blowing, and it's not hard sales or anything that you would think that you wouldn't want to do. These are things that you're going to love, and your team's going to love it as well, and your patients are going to love it even more. So you do more dentistry, your practice grows, your team loves it. This is a great episode. I hope you follow along with this journey because I think you're going to learn a lot from it. Stay tuned. Let's jump into this. So why are we starting another podcast? There's so many podcasts out there. There's so many different things to listen to. So Dr. Blake, you and I were talking, and we were talking about, your practice and your growth and the things that you're doing. And we realized there's a gap in dental when it comes to people just talking transparently about the good and the bad. Now we hear a lot of the good, right? You hear a lot of like, we blew up and, everything's great and we're crushing it. But and I know that there's a lot of heartache and pain and suffering before that. And a lot of people in dental suffer silently. They kind of sit there on the sidelines. They read things on Facebook and they just are like, man, why am I not doing that? What's going on? And what I love about you, Dr. Hamblin, is that you are very transparent. So that's kind of how this podcast started. Was like, hey, could we talk about this? We're already talking on the phone anyways. Could we talk about this? That was number one. And then number two, we were recently just looking at your numbers, and you were able to take your practice from $200,000 to close to $500,000 in production in 12 short months.
It blows my mind. That doesn't even sound like something that should happen. So it did though.
It did. So do you want to start there? Or do you want to kind of share a little bit about how you feel about podcasting and things like that? Or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of it. We obviously, as we've worked together, have noticed the value of really staying close and tight as a marketing team and a dental office. And I think more than anything, that's been probably the key to the success is like, and frankly, that's what I tell everybody that onboards with SMC is, hey, they work really well, but you have to be really clear about what you want. And as much as your team always says, oh, Dr. Hamlin, you're like our favorite, we love you. I also know that there's probably a little bit of like, he's very particular and he knows what he wants and all that stuff. So all of that to say, I think like a clear vision is super, super important.
I think that's a really good point. So just for everybody who's listening to this, Dr. Blake and I work together, but we also talk all the time about other stuff on the phone. And we've built a really good relationship while doing that. And we share a lot of the same values and the same mindsets and things like that. So it's just very natural for us to talk to each other. But one thing that we have pulled together for this podcast is at mydentalplaybook.com. If you go to that URL, we have all of our episodes listed, and then we have all the playbooks that we're going to be listing out for you to be able to just to take. And you can take some of them, take all of them, implement them. And from my experience, if you implement the things that are on that list, you will grow. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's you will grow. But there's a lot of mindset things, process. There's clinical stuff that Dr. Blake's going to be talking about. There's financial things, like all of those things. So make sure you go check that out. But you brought up a good point of like being clear about what you want. I think a lot of doctors are clear on like, they'll say things like, oh, well, I want to do this kind of dentistry, but they're not clear on like how many new patients they want. How do they want them to come through the schedule? Do I want them through my hygiene schedule? Do I want them through the emergency schedule? Those kind of things. And what you've gotten really good at is being able to articulate that. And that makes it really easy for us to be able to deliver for you.
I think even down to a more granular level of it, frankly, it changes week to week. Like I'll message you guys and your team and I'll say, hey, next week, doctor schedule's looking really good, but hygiene's struggling. Let's really focus next week on hygiene. And then the next week may be different. But like globally, the growth mechanism and the strategy has stayed the same. We're just tweaking little details in between. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to chat about any of the details that took us from 200K to almost 500K in production. And I'll just let you lead it with some questions and go from there.
I have the whole list here that you dropped. And I know this is not the whole list, but the list that you were like, hey, these are the first things that come to my mind that I really adjusted. But before we jump into that, one thing that just popped into my mind, could you tell me a little bit, and you've shared this before with me on a prior podcast, how you felt before you started to grow? Because I know there was a little bit of like, dude, did I pick the right industry, or did I pick the right city? Did I pick the right area?
I grew up, I always knew I wanted to be a dentist. I didn't really know the why behind that, but I had a really awesome dentist growing up. He was a family friend, and he kind of influenced me towards dentistry. I thought dentistry was cool because he came in and just joked around and like asked me about my girlfriends, and then like walked out and laughed and moved on. And that's what I thought it was. So I was like, that seems pretty cool. But then I got into dental school and learned what dentistry really is, and really kind of fell in love with it. So dentistry I always knew was what I wanted to do, but the growth part of it was what was really difficult. And it was really hard because at the same time I had a buddy in kind of rural Florida that was growing like meteoric levels, like 200, 300 new patients a month. And our markets were just very different. And so we would talk through things and realize how different dentistry was, but how we could both be successful just doing things differently. And so the frustration came was a little bit of comparison, honestly. Like you said, you see on Facebook or you see on Instagram all the wins that people like to share, but they don't really share the why or the how or anything like that behind it. And so thankfully that doctor is one of my best friends, and we got to kind of like just kick the can around and see what was working. But my frustration was just like, man, I live in this big city. I live in Houston. I know there are people here. Like the joke my wife always says is when we're in traffic, she's like, just think these are all future patients. But the frustration was like, how do we actually get these people in our door? How do we get their attention? And so I spent a lot of time. I spent a better part of 2 years looking for the right combination of things. I tried mailers. I tried different marketing companies. I tried in-housing marketing. I tried using Family Friend. I tried using different companies. Like I felt like I had tried everything. And then I remember chatting with you. I don't remember if it was you or someone on your team, but I was just like, you got one shot, man. like you got one shot, because I've given up on marketing, and you guys took it and ran with it. And as we mentioned, it's blossomed into a nice relationship and a business partnership.
Well, the reason I had you share that, doctor, is that I think a lot of dentists feel that way. I think there's a lot of people out there that are stuck. Now, I was posting online yesterday in a group called DIG, Dental Investment Group, and they were like, I posted something about your numbers, and they were like, well, they hired you for marketing. And I'm like, that's just one part of it. Like that's one component. There's so many other components. Marketing never works on a broken operational system. So I want to talk through some of the things that you did. So the first thing that you did to really grow is you opened up your capacity by building a new office. Walk through that. Like, what does that have to do with growth?
I bought a little bit more backstory. I bought a practice in 2019. It was a 5-op out of network practice here in Houston. And we really didn't have any room to grow in that space. And frankly, we didn't need to grow. Our revenue was growing from services that I was providing by adding, implants, Invisalign, veneers, really everything. And so we were just growing by doing more services. But then I realized about 2 years ago, I was like, hey, we're about to hit this plateau where if we don't start seeing more new patients or just seeing more patients, then we're never going to increase our top line. And so thankfully, I think the Lord definitely played a part in this, but we connected with you and we started seeing success. And right at about that same time, there was a piece of property literally right across the highway from where we were located. And I always knew I wanted to own the real estate at some point, but I didn't really know what that would look like. And so this came available, and I was like, it was an old rundown, like dump, like literally homeless people living in it. And I was like, this is probably the only building right off of I-10 that I could ever even remotely kind of consider affording. Maybe I still don't know if I can afford it, but we'll see. But I was like, oh my gosh, I got to put an offer in on this. And right at that time was when we went from seeing, 18 to 20 new patients a month to 55, 60 new patients a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this is sustainable, like we're going to grow out of this space. So we closed on the building. And sure enough, like a year and a half later, after the build out's all done, we're like scrambling to like, how do we fit more patients into this 5-op practice? And we just knew we couldn't. And so at the same time, brought on Dr. Farrell as our associate, and he's been fantastic. He's a great culture fit. And now we're in a 13-op practice that we're using about 7 or 8 chairs right now. But now we have all the capacity in the world. Like you always joke around of how doctors are like, yeah, send me everybody. And I'm like, no, for real. Like send me everyone because we can say yes to anything. And if we can't, that means I got to hire somebody else. So that's kind of the why behind what we did. But we were tucked away in a 5-story office building. So nobody knew we were there. We were getting lots of referrals, which was great from an internal marketing perspective, but we had no external footprint. And now we've got, prime real estate right off of I-10 where, hundreds and thousands of cars are driving by right next to Discount Tire where people are waiting in line every day to fill up. Yeah, I put the signs up on the deal this week. And so I'm excited to see how those perform. But it was like a no-brainer. I couldn't not do it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how you can go from despair to, oh man, we got to build. Like if I don't build, we're cooked. You know what I mean? And it's like it's such a small shift, but when it happens, I've seen it happen over and over and over again in dentists. It's just like so much excitement and so much, we're going to grow, we're going to keep growing. And the one thing that I do know that pops into people's minds when they hear this, and the reason I know is because dentists say crazy stuff to me online about it, is like, well, you're just like turning and burning through patients and you're not really like treating I know dentists have said this to you. I've watched like the back and forth. You're not really caring for patients. If you're doing $500,000 with a GP practice in production, you're not really taking care of people. But the fact of the matter is most of the people are buying treatment. Your ROI is like through the roof, meaning every time you're putting $1 in, a bunch of dollars are coming back out, which tells me people are buying treatment. They're happy. You're happy. Talk about a little bit about this sales process and what you've changed there. I know that's a dirty word in dental, but it's definitely a real thing.
I think, and to add on to what you were just saying, even more importantly, like I just had a patient leave and she came in for a post-op and we were just chatting and she started telling me about her husband who's in the hospital and had another patient telling me about her dog and they're crying and I'm crying and we're hugging. And so like more than they're just buying, like they're connected, like they know that we care. They don't just feel like we care. They know we care because we're asking those questions and you can provide really great service and produce a lot of money at the same time and connect with these patients. So yeah, and our sales process really it's evolving every day. And it's something I feel like I'm like the chief reminding officer. I feel like, man, we just talked about this, guys. And then a week later, we talk about it again. But I would say the biggest thing that we did was about a year ago, I was in a mastermind with T-Bone and Sully, the 3D group. And it was really helpful. And it really helped me refine a few of my systems. And this was one of them. And we really bought into the whole financial menu and presenting the best at every appointment. So when a patient comes in, even if they come in for a limited exam in our office, they come in and we take a iTero scan, we take 4 bite rings, we take a pano, we take a cone beam, treat them like a new patient because that's what they are. They're an opportunity walking through the door and we don't know if we're going to get another opportunity to help serve them. And so we will say, hey, Gary, it was great to meet you. There's a couple options here. We can certainly focus on this one tooth if you'd like, but I'm seeing some other things. Would you be open to the idea of hearing everything I see? And no right-minded person is going to say no to that question.
And just so everybody knows, in sales, you want to be invited in, right? To speak. And you don't want to be like, hey, can I sell you a bunch of dentistry? Obviously, that's not the way you say it. It's, can I show you my expert opinion? I'm the dentist, right? And so can I show you the things that I see? And when someone says yes, now it doesn't feel like you're selling them. It feels like you're educating them.
Something we talk about, and Dr. Farrell and I talk about a lot, is permission choice. So like asking for permission and then giving them a choice. And when you can influentially communicate with people, you can almost always ask a question that you already know the answer to. So I will often, even with new patients, I'll ask them before I lay them back, hey, do you mind if I lay you back and just take a look around and see what's going on? Of course they don't mind. That's why they're here. But it makes them feel in control. And when you can start to make them feel like they're in control, when you present a $20,000 treatment plan, they know you're not trying to push anything like down their throat. You're just trying to give them their best. And so that's what we do. And I think where I was headed with that was when we present treatment, we use a financial menu. So it's literally just a Google Doc with some calculations in it. And it shows like this is what we recommended. This is your patient portion. And then right underneath it, it has rough estimates of like what you could finance that treatment with on Cherry, Sunbit, whatever, Care Credit, whatever you like to. And the numbers aren't exact. Like that's the point, isn't for the number to be right. The point is to figure out which financing method does the patient want to pay with cash, credit card, debit card, or do they want to pay with financing? And so when they're like, yeah, that $150 option looks interesting to me. Well, now you've already, step number one's done. They want to do the treatment. Now all you got to do is figure out how do we fit this into your budget? And so you go and you see if they qualify for financing. And if they do, great. And if they don't, you figure out another plan.
And the reason that's so powerful is because most dentists are offering a close-ended option, meaning here's your treatment, it's $4,000, yes or no. And that means 50% of the time you're going to get a no. But when you're offering multiple different solutions, now you have a much higher likelihood of someone saying yes to that, because you really don't know how they want to pay. They don't know how they want to pay yet because they don't know enough about what you're doing. Now, you know, and I know what dentists hate about this. It's the fees on the financing. So walk me through the economics on that and how you think through that.
The easiest thing you can do is just join DSN and you automatically get gold pricing with Cherry Finance. And so that saves you like a percent or two there. But the other thing is like, number one, if you're in network, you're already taking a 40% hit, which is much worse than at the highest we pay is 9% with Cherry Finance. But the other thing is like when your schedule is probably really busy, but not productive, right? And so you want to reserve some blocks for production versus just fill your schedule. And so where this comes in is like, for me, for a long time, it was like, man, I would much rather prep a crown for half price than do nothing. You know what I mean? And so then I kind of got to that point. I was like, okay, I can say yes to a few of these. And then I just realized how much production was walking out the door simply because it's like, no, I can't afford a $2,000 crown, much less them, right? And so just realizing the amount of dentistry that you're going to do is so much greater than the fees you're going to pay. People also forget that they're paying a credit card merchant. I mean, some of this is changing right now, like with a lot of the transferring of payments, but like people forgot for years, like you paid 3-4% on your credit card deal. Well, yeah, you're just paying another extra 2% with Cherry Finance. Like just say yes and let them say yes to treatment and move on, you know? So it's a big shift. It took me a while to get there. I was in the camp of like, no, I'm the best dentist in the world and you need to pay me for my best dentistry and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, you just need to like, if you really think you're the best dentist, then you need to figure out a way to provide the most treatment to the most people. Like, and if you don't do financing, you can't do it.
Yep. And so one of the other things that you listed was you really increased your marketing. So you ramped up your marketing. And this is tricky because right now I just did the numbers. You're paying like 4% of your production, 3-4% for production of your total production towards marketing, which a lot of people would be like, okay, that's reasonable, but it wasn't. It used to be way higher, right? You were paying a huge percentage of your production that people would say, that's crazy. But then you grew into the number And so could you talk about ramping up your marketing, even though it was a huge percentage of what you were spending to get to where you wanted to go?
Some of that will feed into kind of what we talked about as mindset. And frankly, like I was very cautious going back to how I entered the relationship. I was very cautious with what marketing could happen. So the first month, it was like, man, we had an amazing month. We doubled our new patient growth. And then it's like, okay, calm down. Like this could be a fluke, you know? And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to raise it, you know, 2 grand more. And so then we did that and we had a better month. And then I was like, all right, maybe you guys know what you're doing. I'll do a little more. And then finally, like it was to the point to where I think I like even emailed you. I was like, hey, can I just like, can you guys just, can I pay you an unreal, yeah, all my money in the world and we can just like scale and grow this thing. And so anyways, I think I kind of forgot the question.
Oh yeah, no, we were talking about like percentage of growth in growth mindset. Like, so you were spending right now, you're spending in a reasonable amount of marketing budget for the size of your practice, but it wasn't, you were outpacing that. You were probably at one point spending 15% of your production, which is insane.
Honestly, it was like when I closed on the building, it was like when you go off to college, you don't really know what you're getting into. And that forced my hand on it on an associate to where like I had all the time before that to, I would say looking back, like stress myself out clinically, really push myself and produce like ridiculous numbers just myself. Like what I was doing by myself, you should never do. Like honestly. But like the building really pushed me to do that because I really didn't have the time to put in place with that. And so where that plays in is my growth mentality had to shift. I had to shift from like how much dentistry can I, Blake Hamblin, do on patients to how can we as Hamblin Family Dentistry do the most dentistry on the most patients. And it wasn't just about how do I fill my schedule. It was like how do I fill my schedule and another doctor's schedule and another hygienist schedule and whatnot. So, I mean, yeah, we added, and then we got to a point to where we were on a phone call. And what I appreciate about you, Gary, is like you're like, I think you're spending too much. I think you're actually marketing for other practices. We need to come back down, reset, and see how that worked. And so you've just got to be okay with pushing profit down the road. And like you can still be profitable, but the difference, and I've had some conversations with I think even some of your clients where I'm like, okay, is an extra 50 grand, is an extra 100 grand to your take home revenue, is that going to change your life? And they're like, no. And then I ask them, would adding $1 million to top line change your life? And it's like, yes. And it does it in perpetuity. Like you can do it again and again and again and again. So like, obviously you got to be able to pay the bills. You got to be able to take care of your family. You got to be able to provide for your wife and your kids and all those things. But like, you got to decide, do you want to be able to post all the money you make on social media? Or do you want to post about like, I'm growing at a ridiculous rate and I'm going to continue to do this and then hopefully provide really good opportunities for more employment, my community involvement, all of that stuff. Like you just have way bigger impact.
Yeah. So many times I've done it as a business owner myself where I'm like, let's dial in profit. I want to be as profitable as possible, but I also want to invest in the growth. And you can, and you had a good quote. You said, you can invest in the growth and still be profitable, but you can't optimize for both, right? You can't, if you're optimizing for profit, then you don't have money left over for growth because that takes money. And if you're trying to optimize for growth, then you're going to be less profitable. You can still be profitable. And so I love that mindset. And that goes back into the growth mindset. And I think that spilled over into like you and hiring an associate. And just so everybody knows, like he said, I work all the time, but now he's been taking more time off because he has a better team and he's been stress testing some of the team members and the systems and those kind of things. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole. We're in different phase transitions. I've got kind of a life coach and a business coach, and he talks about phase transitions. And we were at that plateau phase, a couple of years ago. And that was all about, and I remember having a conversation with him and he said, you're in a lock-in phase. And what that meant was like, you're not growing. So now is when you need to like really hone in on your systems. Right. And so that's kind of what we did. But right as we were trying to like focus in on our systems is when we met y'all. And then we started growing again. And I was like, okay. And so as we've grown, we've run into new challenges that we didn't used to face. Dr. Farrell was the first associate that I ever hired. I had maintained the previous doctor that I bought the practice from as an associate, but like that's a different dynamic than bringing in someone totally new. So having to learn, how do I introduce associates to the practice space? How do I fill his schedule? Like, what's my philosophy on, do I feed the associate or do I feed me? Like, I'm in the camp of you feed the associate. Make that position so good that they never want to go anywhere, right? Like make them love what they're doing. We've had to really improve like our internal management to where we had 6 team members when I bought the practice, and now we have 15. And you can manage 6 people on your own, but you cannot manage 15. And so I've had to really learn how to like give up a lot, which has been freeing and allowed me to, last week I was on vacation with my wife, and we don't get to vacation a whole lot, but when we do, I was totally unplugged. Yeah, except for when but she was taking a nap, so I was good. we were good.
But that's fun. But see, here's the thing of people, marketing and like growth talk and stuff like, hey, how are we going to dominate the market? To me, that's not work. That's just like fun.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, definitely. So releasing some control. One of the roles that I've learned over the years that's really helped me, and dentists struggle with this because dentists are typically perfectionists, is the 80% rule where, okay, I'm going to let this person do it. Are they going to do it as good as me, the owner who's like poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this company? Probably not. But can they do it 80% as good as me? Yeah. And I'm going to be okay with that. And I'm not talking now, when dentists hear that, they freak out because they think I'm talking about clinical dentistry. I'm not talking about clinical dentistry. I'm talking about like administrative stuff or answering the phones and things like that. Do you have any frameworks like that you use, or how did you let go of stuff and not?
It was just, I finally reached a point to where I was like, I can't do all of this. And I can't look at every little account and every little thing that happens and have my finger on it. And so frankly, like we're in that phase right now. We're having to really up level our management team, and I'm investing in coaching for like 2 leaders within my practice so that they can, because they've never done this either. Like they're learning how to step into this stuff and what to do. And sometimes they come to me and I have the answers, and sometimes they come to me and I'm like, I mean, this is what I used to do, but you can make something up and let's see what works. I also realized like there's some things I gave away and I was like, man, they're actually better at this than me. You know what I mean? And I was able to gain some confidence there. And it's I think a lot of people think you've got to go from like being the everything to being the nothing in the practice. And it's like, it's a journey, just like growth is a journey. And it was a little bite at a time that I was able to give away a little bit. And I'm still working on it. Like if you asked my team, they would still joke around and they'd be like, you're micromanaging. But like now I can sit there and be like, yeah, you're right. Or, hey, yeah, I'm doing this because I need this from you. You know what I mean? And I've just learned how to better communicate that in a respectful way. And I feel like it's been returned from our leadership team too. So
that's awesome. All right. So before we close this thing out, is there anything else that you think like, man, if someone's going to double, they're going to go from $200,000 to almost $500,000 in production in 12 months. Is there anything else that they need to think through, or anything else that pops into your brain? We covered a lot today.
It's a tough question because there's not like 5 things you can do to make it happen. Like it's a dance. It really is. And so I think there are some things here. Let's do this, because dentists are really good at like taking a bunch of notes and doing nothing with it. So if there's one thing, and like we should load this on the website. If there's one thing, implement a financial menu or a financial system, like a way of presenting treatment every single time, so that when your treatment coordinators, and maybe you don't have a treatment coordinator, or maybe you don't have someone that is great at talking with patients about finances, that might be you as the dentist, and that's okay. Like do that and bring your team in on it. Let them listen to you until they get good at it. Role play every morning in morning huddle, role play. Be the patient, be a really nice patient, then you be a really difficult patient. And then let them learn and let them fail on you until you're like, man, you got it, right? But implementing a financial menu, I think, is revolutionary to your practice, because if you do that, you have to implement financing. So this is actually a way I get you to do two things in one.
That's awesome. Could you send me a picture of yours so I can?
I'll just share the Google Doc and then we can upload it and go from there.
Yeah. And just so everybody's aware, we're going to be doing this every single week. So Dr. Blake's like, I will meet with you every week. I'll give you 45 minutes. You can ask me whatever you want and you can extract out any systems that you want out of my practice or anything like that. And we're going to package it together for you. And then we're going to just give it all to you for free. Well, you have to give your email so we can email it to you. But other than that, we're going to give it to you. And yeah, I think this is going to be amazing. I think people are going to love it. And I think it's going to bring a lot of action and just fruit to the things that you've been doing. And I know that's your heart, is you just want to give back to people. So I appreciate that about you.
Also say is like, definitely don't show up to listen to me talk, because Gary's going to share a ton of knowledge and wisdom in the industry. And I know I've talked a lot today, but I'm going to be asking a ton of questions because I am still very much learning about this marketing journey and how I can grow. And who better to learn it from than someone who's got their pulse on practices literally around the country that are maybe a step ahead of me or a step behind me and can help grow. So this is going to be a journey for all of us, and I'm super excited about it.
I'm so excited. Like, you have no idea. I get to do a lot of cool stuff. This is probably one of the funnest projects that we're kicking off here. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the audience listening, caring about this stuff, and drop a comment down below. Let us know, what do you want to learn about? What do you wish that you had transparency on? And we will do our best to give that to you and talk through it. So thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great day.